Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Allison Dawson, and I'm the Student Development Specialist at English and Writing Tutor for ECTC Student Support Services Program. I hope each of you are having a wonderful day. Today, I will be giving a brief virtual presentation titled Getting Back to the Basics, Confusion with Commas. In this presentation, we'll cover 3 quick do's and don'ts when it comes to comma usage. And these do's and don'ts that I've included are based on the biggest issues I've seen with comma usage throughout my tutoring experience. And with that being said, the objective of today's presentation is for you to walk away with a better understanding of the rules of comma usage so that you may further apply these that I've included to your writing in your college courses. Now let's jump right in, but before we do, please take note that the box is located on the left and right side of the visual aid here. The box with the check mark inside symbolizes the comma do's, and the box with the tools that make an X symbolizes the don'ts. We're going to start with the comma do's. That first comma do rule here is to use commas to surround non-restrictive elements. Okay, so before I explain this rule, I want to go ahead and cover these examples that I've included in here. And the reason that I want to do that is that so you kind of know what to look for. A couple of things with these examples. I've included an incorrect and correct example for all of you visual learners out there. These are really helpful. And also within these examples, I have a mint green highlighted bolded portion there, and that's kind of where we're going to emphasize our focus when kind of going over these topics. Now the sentences in this example read, the currency of an article, which is determined by date of publication, is important to review while doing research for a writing assignment. Okay, so that non-restrictive element here, like I said, is the bolded mid-green portion in the sentence, that which is determined by date of publication. Now I'd like to refer to non-restrictive elements as extra but necessary information, because if you take out that portion of the sentence, you are not losing the purpose or context of the sentence itself. One other thing I'd like to mention, the words which or who are commonly used in these situations, so that's another thing to look out for. Now going back to that, if you take out that portion of the sentence, you aren't losing the purpose or context. I'll reread this sentence to kind of show you what I mean by that, by taking that portion out. The currency of an article is important to review while doing research for a writing assignment. So looking back on that, reviewing the currency of the article is still emphasized there. The portion that is that bolded portion there, the which is determined by date of publication, that non-restrictive element, that supplements that by kind of giving you, oh, there's also a date of publication, that's where you can find the currency. So the meaning there, the central meaning, even with taking that out, is still emphasized. So ask yourself as you're going through your writing and you might see a situation like this, ask yourself if this is an extra but necessary bit of information within that sentence. And if it is, surround it with commas. All right, moving on to rule number 2 here. Use commas prior to a coordinating conjunction. Now I've included 2 correct examples here that we'll cover, but we're going to look at that first example first. And that one reads, the sun was shining in the sky, but the pouring rain had not yet ceased. So looking back at that bolded mint green portion there, comma, but represents that conjunction. And conjunctions are defined as a word used to connect clauses or sentences, as well as to coordinate words in a phrase or clause. Now the second example, which is still correct, but it doesn't include a conjunction, coordinating conjunction, reads this way. The sun was shining in the sky, the pouring rain had not yet ceased. Those 2 sentences that were put together in the first example can stand alone by themselves. So that is a correct way to do this as well. Now, if you connect those 2 independent ideas, you'll use a conjunction word, and conjunction words are and, but, for, or, nor, yet, and so. I would encourage you to make note of these words or even memorize them so that you don't forget this rule when you're writing. All right, our third and final do rule is to use commas after introductory phrases. Now let's look at the example provided here. Primarily, one may find it difficult to sew if their needle isn't threaded. Now keep in mind, after reviewing that bolded mint green portion here, that word primarily, that these introductory phrases fall prior to the independent clause. So pay attention to that keyword introductory. That word primarily in there is an introductory element. It's a transition word. And these fall at the beginning of sentences. That's your best way to remember this. Now, this rule is especially important when we're writing topic or transition sentences and essays, as transition words fall right here. Transition words introduce new ideas. So you would always use a comma after a transition word. So keep that in mind. All right, keeping these do's in mind, let's look at the don'ts, starting with that first comma don't rule, which is don't use a comma with restrictive elements. Now, please note again that I've included a correct and incorrect example for your reference, you visual learners. So let's take a look at these first. Now, the sentence in this example reads, mechanics who buy damaged cars likely have extensive practice in vehicle repair. Now, I'm going to ask you to think back to that last slide when we covered those extra but necessary non-restrictive elements. Here we're essentially looking at the opposite. Restrictive elements do not require commas, as they are totally necessary to fulfill the purpose of your sentence. Now, thinking back to the examples here, if I were to take away that bolded orange section, we would be losing that valuable information. Now, let me demonstrate this by reading the sentence without that portion. Mechanics likely have extensive practice in vehicle repair. Now, think about that. Not every mechanic may have extensive practice in vehicle repair. A good way to remember your restrictive elements is to ask yourself, is this information totally necessary? Moving forward with don't rule number 2. Don't use a comma to join two main clauses. This is also called comma splicing. That might be a term you're a little bit more familiar with. And let's go ahead and look over our examples here. The sentence reads, Mozart composed several operas in his lifetime. His last opera was The Magic Flute. Now notice, in the incorrect example, that using a comma to try and connect these two independent ideas does not work. Think back to those conjunctions. If you use a comma there, the sentence will still read as an incomplete sentence. Now there are two quick fixes here. One of those, utilizing a semicolon, is demonstrated in the correct example. However, that's not the only way. Another fix for this is to use a coordinating conjunction, and, but, or so. Now, if you're going to use a coordinating conjunction, what you'll do, which I'll demonstrate with the example that we have, you would keep that comma after lifetime, but you would pull that and, but, or so and place it right after that comma. So in this case, the sentence would read, Mozart composed several operas in his lifetime, comma, and his last opera was The Magic Flute. So the best way to remember this one is to kind of first look at your sentence, determine whether or not your sentence contains two main clauses or independent ideas, and further decide whether that semicolon or coordinating conjunction would be your best fit, based on whatever preference that you have. And be patient with yourself with this rule, because this one can take some time to practice and perfect. Our final don't rule is don't use a comma between two cumulative adjectives. And we'll quickly go over the incorrect and correct examples listed. That sentence reads, some stops on the tour feature prominent historical landmarks. Now notice the words prominent and historical are both adjectives describing words that are essential to fulfill the purpose of the sentence. The key to remembering the cumulative adjectives is remembering that they increase and build meaning as they move closer to that noun. Now, with cumulative adjectives, they do not hold an equal amount of weight in modifying that noun. They are both essential there. So kind of keep that in mind. But another way to test to see if these are cumulative adjectives is to switch the adjectives, kind of flip-flop them in your sentence. So in this case, if we did that, it would read, some stops on the tour feature historical prominent landmarks. And so in this case, historical prominent would sound a bit off. So if you flip-flop them and they sound off, that's kind of your sign that's going to tell you these are cumulative adjectives. You do not need a comma here. To conclude our presentation today, I've got my contact information and availability listed on this slide. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to help you out. Thank you for listening and I hope that you have a blessed day.